morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I could just say to you, first of all, I'm absolutely heartbroken with what's happened to all of you. If I put myself and my own parents and family in your position, it's just absolutely ludicrous. In a country like ours, where we're told to save our superannuation and put away that little bit extra, and really suffer at times, you know, I suppose in our younger working lives, to make sure that we've got that superannuation there, so we're not reliant on government pensions and we're not reliant on government, and so that we can have some quality of life. As I said, I'm absolutely heartbroken for all of you to be in this circumstance, and quite frankly, it's not good enough. We're not a third world country. If I went out and committed fraud tomorrow, you could bet that I would be locked up and I wouldn't see the light of day for a long time, and rightfully so. And I feel that not only do you all need compensation for this, but we need to secure and make sure that this does not happen again, not to your families or my families or anybody else's families. This is something that the government needs to step up to the plate with, and frankly, I don't care who you're with in what political party. This is not about politics, this is about people. And we're all people, we're all human beings, and we all need to step up to the plate. We know that there's been a huge, huge fraud committed. We know there's been wrongs done, and we all need bipartisan support to do so. And I'm very, very upset and disgusted that our two current members, our federal members, can't even take time out of their agenda or their lifestyle to come and be here for you people. And I want to let you know that I am here for you, and I will be here and do everything I can to support you, to make sure that you get the compensation that you deserve. But not only that, to make sure that we do something so this doesn't ever happen to anybody ever again. And if you could just accept my sincere condolences for what's happened to you, because I could not imagine the anguish that you all must be going through, and I'm terribly sorry that you are in that predicament. But I do believe in the power of people, and I do believe that by seeing what we have here today, that we can all work together. And this is going to be a long fight, but I believe if we do stay united in this fight, we can get a good outcome. So I applaud all of you for coming here today. The questions. Do you accept that the trio capital investment products came under the prudential and supervisory oversight, and therefore the responsibility of APRA and ASIC?
If I can just say, I have not seen these questions before, so these questions were given to me straight up. If I can just preface what I'm saying by thanking very much Kelly for being here. She was herself the victim of the fraud that was perpetrated, in my view, in Shellharbour Council between the Australian Labor Party, Trade Union and Independent. More on that later. And also particularly to Terry Rumble. We've heard a lot about corruption in the current government. Terry was an extremely honest member of Parliament here. He worked very, very closely with the trade union movement when I was Secretary of the South Coast Labor Council. And he's one of the real traditional members of the Labor Party in Parliament. He travelled on the train to work. Bumped into him a few times. And he always responded. Is that better? Right. Do you want me to stand up? I'll stand up. In regard to the first question, the question is yes. Your investment, I think the better question is, was your investment subject to statutory protection? The answer is, in regard to ASIC, yes, and in regard to APRA, yes. And if I just spend a minute to describe why that was, the two regulators had responsibility to protect your investment. It's an unusual situation. When the Keating government instituted what it called the Great Reform of Superannuation, which was to set up a private pension scheme in this country, an inquiry was held called the Wallace Inquiry, which recommended, and in fact this was the structure, that there be two regulators in the financial system in this country. APRA was and does regulate banks and superannuation funds. ASIC regulates the rest, if I could put it as simply as that. Now, Bill Shorten, the Minister, is a liar,
he deliberately misrepresented the situation when this crisis hit. I'll talk later why he did that. But the misrepresentation was that somehow, because you were self-managed fund superannuants, there was no coverage, protection, and he used the infamous phrase, you were swimming outside the flags. One of the most, I think, disgraceful and despicable statements made by a politician, there's been plenty of them, hasn't there, in the last week, by a politician in this country in living memory. For sure knew that your investment was not just to be protected by one regulator, it was to be protected by two. And it happened this way. Trio had underneath it 5 superannuation funds that were licensed, warranted by APRA. And APRA's obligation was to continue a regulatory oversight of Trio because of those 5 related superannuation funds. So, by law, Trio was what's called a responsible entity, that is, responsible for superannuation funds. Now, APRA can't and didn't make a distinction in Trio between that part of Trio that was looking after superannuation and that part of Trio that's responsible for self-managed funds. That's impossible. We know it's impossible now because we've seen the bank account. In Melbourne, in the Docklands branch, this is the piece of material that was leaked from ASIC that Greg Metcalfe has got upset about. We now know that all the money that was invested in the subsidiaries and related entities of Trio went largely into one bank account, which was down at Docklands branch of the NAB in Melbourne. So, APRA can't pull apart this bit of investment from that bit of investment, nor should it. It has an obligation to regulate Trio. But remember, ASIC, under this crazy, chaotic scheme we have in this country at the moment, of 2 overlapping regulators, ASIC regulates those non-banking superannuation fund entities, which included a Star Strategic Fund, where you invested. And John Rumble has just highlighted something really critical in this. APRA should be subject to a complete investigation by an independent body set up by the government, because we now have an admission. This is the second critical admission from APRA. Greg Jones, who was the acting chairman of APRA, many of you know this, in a meeting with VOF, attended by Bill Short and also by the chairman of ASIC, made the extraordinary statement that APRA had come to the conclusion, before ASIC froze Trio, that the directors of Trio were, quote, a bunch of incompetents, unquote. We now have the admission that APRA did not relay that assessment to ASIC. The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. It's a chaotic, failed, broken system.
So, Paul, do you see that as a regulatory oversight, or do you just see this as plain simple mismanagement?
Well, I see this both. You couldn't get a worse failure. The structure leaves it wide open for the kind of crime that occurred here, because there are gaps in the structure between APRA and ASIC. Secondly, the personnel in APRA and ASIC failed totally to protect your investment. So it's both a failure of people and a failure of structure. You couldn't get an example of a total regulatory failure that's worse than this one. Which brings me to the next point, which wasn't in the question, which is the reason why we have the cover-up, which we have.